Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo. And today I want to take a little bit of a trip down memory lane and talk about Gears of War. Gears of War is something that I have a really big history with. It's something that I grew up with from a very young teenage years, actually, up until, Judgment, the last entry in the series. I played a lot of the game. Myself, as well as my close friends and my brother and I, were all very invested in the characters and the story, and of course the multiplayer experience. I actually played competitive Gears of War back in the days of Cyber Athletes, which was a fully web-based, match-up online tournament gaming thing, way before the days of MLG and game battles and stuff like that. Anyways, I want to talk a little bit about my history with Gears of War, why I love the franchise so much, and sort of where I felt like it sort of grew away from what it was, and my hopes and dreams for the future of the franchise, as it now lies in the hands of Black Tusk. Of course, that studio actually being, sort of headed now by Rod Ferguson, who was, of course, one of the original developers on Gears of War, right alongside Cliff Bleszinski and Eric Pierna and all those guys, all the original Gears of War guys. So very excited for the future of that. But let's talk about my history with Gears of War. It starts back, of course, with the original Gears of War. And as many people may know, the multiplayer for the original Gears of War was actually sort of an afterthought. It wasn't meant to do as well as it did. But when people finally started getting their hands on it, the press especially, it became something that was in just about every single magazine it was featured as this really visceral experience. And of course, being a game that was being developed in part by a lot of the members who had worked on Unreal Tournament, it instantly got the attention of everyone when it came to multiplayer, and it was something that I was looking forward to very much when the game launched. So immediately, once the original Gears of War launched, came back home, beat the entire campaign with my brother cooperative, already started to get really hooked on the world and the characters. The original Gears of War was a dark game. There was a lot of almost horror settings to it, and in fact, when the original game was actually sort of announced and advertised to us, and it was focused on this dark horror setting. It was almost supposed to be an action horror game in many ways. Of course, the series really kind of jumped away from that, moving into the second and the third entry, and of course, Judgment is really nothing like that at all. So that is one thing that I would definitely like to see return to the franchise, is that sort of horror setting. I felt like it added so much atmosphere to the world of Gears of War. I'm not saying that the game has to go back to being really dark and bland without any color, because that was one of the fantastic things about 2 and 3, was that we started to see a lot of color thrown into the game, and the environments became very pretty and very wonderful places to be. But that doesn't mean you can't do, sort of that dark, gritty horror, sci-fi horror feeling that the first game had. Anyways, played through the campaign, and then all of my friends gathered together to sit down at a buddy's house and get some LAN going, back when LAN parties were still a thing before everyone just happened to have Xbox Live. And that lasted a whole entire weekend, and we got addicted to the multiplayer. And things sort of snowballed from there, and I ended up playing it pretty much non-stop all the way through Gears 1, 2, and 3. Just pretty diehard with the entire franchise, despite it always having a lot of netcode issues, networking issues. The game just never really felt right. And of course, as the game started to evolve, certain things started to change. The great thing about the original Gears of War and Gears of War 2 was that it was a really heavy, cover-based tactical shooter, even in its multiplayer. Many of us who played the game back then have very fond memories of these really hardcore, sort of, flank-based firefights, where you would literally be held down for almost the entire match sometimes, fighting over something like the boom shot on Mansion, sniper on Mansion, and you would set up these really elaborate attempts to flank the enemy team, and it just created some of the best team-based multiplayer moments that I have ever had. I've never played a game that has been able to recreate that experience. Not even close, which is why what Metal Gear Online has showed actually has me very excited, but that's something I hope they can bring back. I'm not saying the shotgun has to be a completely useless tool, again, but I would love to see the return of things like the Lancer, and actual firefights, the use of cover. Judgment really did away with that. Of course, Judgment, though, it was a different developer in many ways, and it's not really considered a main entry in the franchise anymore. Black Tusk, what the game that they're currently supporting for holiday events, they're going back to Gears of War 3. So I actually sat down and played it, and that's the footage you guys have been seeing. I sat down and played it yesterday, and I had a pretty good time. I was a bit rusty, so don't mind the footage. It was not the best, and we lost every single round. Again, it's kind of what happens with randoms. We actually were probably playing against a team that looked like they communicated fairly well, which I imagine that's the only thing that really exists anymore in that game, are people who are still playing as a team who really enjoy the game. There's a lot of tournaments still going on. a lot of love for that franchise still, and that is awesome. I love to see that. That's definitely a very exciting thing. So it was great to be able to hop back in and actually find a match. Still bits here and there of that wonky netcode, but in general I had a really great time, and it didn't feel like a giant shotgun Nasher fest. There was actually a lot of really great firefight moments. I was loving using the hammer burst, getting some nice angles on the enemy. I just had a really great time. You know, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting to come back like most of the time when you return to an old memory and be completely disappointed and frustrated, but I wasn't. So that was a nice trip down memory lane. It really, really was. So when we talk about what do I want from the future entry of Gears of War, number one, I wanted to not be afraid to disappoint us fanboys, so to speak. You know, break the mold a little bit. You know, we may seem like we want the same thing, but at the end of the day, we want what's best for the franchise. We want a new experience that is still Gears of War. And Rod Ferguson has sort of mentioned this in tweets, how, you know, they're going to have to disappoint some people if they really want to make the best possible game, and that's fine by me. That's fine by me. But if you can bring back those two core elements of the original game, that really tight, team-based, tactical, third-person cover-based, you know, shooter experience that was the original Gears of War, with great modes like Execution and Warzone, no, you know, limited respawn modes. I loved those modes. It was one of the few games that I really enjoyed not having respawns in, because you were so on the edge of your seat. Every decision that you made with your team was a vital one. I loved that. I loved that round-based stuff. It's so many great memories. I can't even explain. You know, it beats out Halo in many ways for me in terms of memories, this game, because it had so much atmosphere. It still does. Combined with, you know, great sound effects, small touches like the active reload system. More games should be doing that, and they're not, and that always pisses me off because it's such a great piece of game design. It really genuinely is. And of course, I would love to see the single player story return and have a little bit more of those darker elements. I'm not saying the entire campaign has to be this dreary horror fest, but, you know, the Krill were terrifying. There's many elements of Gears of War that should be scary, even to some, you know, sort of beefed up soldier, you know, who's a member of the COG. So those are my hopes and dreams for Gears of War. Hopefully I'll spark some memories for some of my, for some of you guys who played the game and maybe are still playing the game. I know I often see a couple people who follow me on Xbox still playing Gears of War 3. That's awesome. Really love that. And that's just, it's cool. It's cool in general. And I wanted to take this time to try and to get together my first community event. I feel like a lot of people may still own Xboxes. I'm going to try and rotate the platforms with these. I haven't set a date for it yet, but what I want to do is I want to get numbers. I want to see how many people are interested in joining me for a sort of subscriber Gears of War 3 event. Feel free, let me know in the comment section below. Go ahead and send me your Xbox Live gamer tag. I'm going to make a list of all this stuff. And then over the next couple months as we finish up with Christmas, I'm going to start trying to make this happen sometime in January probably. You know, get a weekend where I know everybody's going to be available who's entered the list. Even if we get like 5 people, 4 people, we'll still do it. I think it'll be a great time. And of course, feel free to leave any of your Gears of War memories and any of your hopes and dreams for the future of the franchise in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next one.
Alright, 5-4. Oh, damn. 5-4.
They just got frags again, and there's at least 2 or 3 people out there.
On that mark, got boom shot.